District 2 Councilor Linehan scored a convincing victory, 8-5. 2 years in that term. We'll find out his hopes and what the challenges are ahead for him on the Boston City Council. Then on the second half, you'll meet one of the new faces on the Boston City Council. 4 elected, including 3 who've never served before. Amongst them, District 8 City Councilor Josh Zakim. He, of course, the scion of the legendary Anti-Defamation League activist Lenny Zakim. We'll find out how he builds on that legacy as he serves in the Boston City Council. All that and more tonight on Talking the Neighborhoods. I'm Joe Heisler, your host. Tonight, city politics, following up on last week's inauguration of a new mayor. Tonight, we have the new president of the Boston City Council joining us here in this first half. Of course, recently re-elected to his District 2 City Council seat last week in the election for a new leader to replace Steve Murphy. District 2 Councilor Linehan scored a convincing victory, 8-5, and now takes the reins of leadership. And I want to thank him for coming in tonight and joining us.
Joe, how are you? Good to see you. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Congratulations, of course. First of all, it had to be particularly sweet. You know, there were some people that were, some of these wise guy pundits suggesting that you might have a hard time getting re-elected, much less elected president of the city council. Did that make it a little sweeter, so to speak?
Well, Monday was a great day. It was a great day for me. It was a great day for the district, and it was especially a great day for our city as a whole. To be at the inaugural, to be at BC, and then to go back to City Hall and to be elected to lead your peers in what seems to be a true transition in city government. I'm just so excited that I'm here. And
of course, the new mayor made an appearance shortly after your election to offer his congratulations and a heartfelt kind of handout. Something some would say that's a new day. Of course, new mayors can say lots of things, just about anything they want. But is it the start of something different here?
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, there seems to be a lot of hope, a lot of expectation, and promise, not only amongst the folks who voted in the election on November 6th, but even amongst all my colleagues. The next day, the mayor had us at a traditional dinner where the mayor takes the new council out with their spouses, and I just got a sense of renewal in the room. Folks really feel that this is an opportunity to carve a new path in a new way in which we work, you know.
Well, what role? How does Bill Linehan take the city council in that new direction?
Yeah, well, I mean, fortunately for me, my colleagues elected me, and I think, you know, that with my 25 plus years of government experience, both as an elected official on the city council and working for the past 2 mayors, I think I'm positioned well to help both the mayor and the council create, you know, what the city needs moving forward.
Well, it was a 8-5 vote. Of course, in this day and age, should anybody be expected to be elected unanimously, or is that wishful thinking?
Yeah, well, you know, with 4 new council members, you know, 8-5 is fairly resounding, and I'm just fortunate. The campaign's over. I've had discussions with virtually each and every councilor, and we look forward collectively to work together. I've asked them all to participate in building criteria for the committees, and then for their input in the committees in which they'd like to lead and represent it.
How do you see yourself in that role? If we read everything we believed everything we read in the papers, we wouldn't know what to think. But some characterizations that it's politics. I'm trying to think of the line: politics of the past versus the politics of the future. That had to be kind of hurtful because I know you're a forward-looking guy, and
yeah, you know, I mean, I don't take it all too seriously. You know, pundits do what they do, and but I think my work stands for itself. I think the fact that I'm leading at this time I feel comfortable that I have a good personal relationship with each and every counselor, and they know what I do. And so I continue to look forward, regardless of what people may perceive where I come from. That's why I'm in this business. I'm here to move Boston forward, to help facilitate the government in the best way possible. I have a lot at stake here. I have 6 grandchildren who live in the city. All my 4 kids live in the city. I've given over 25 years in public service to the city of Boston itself. So there's a lot at stake, and I feel very fortunate.
Sometimes there's negative connotations attached to, and I'm wondering how you feel if some of that is owing to the fact that you're from South Boston. Now, one of my favorite neighborhoods, but you know, that may not be true for everybody.
Well, it's a very popular neighborhood these days.
It certainly is.
People from all over the world want to live there. Yeah. So it's, you know, there's baggage with whatever neighborhood, you know, ethnic group, you know, and it's easy for people to put you in a box to if they're trying to explain who you are to somebody else. But I don't fit in a box easily, you know, and I've worked all over this city. I've worked in every single neighborhood of the city, in enclaves that I would never suspect to have worked in and to have made a difference. So, you know, I'm comfortable in my skin. Yeah.
Well, of course, coming up, one of the biggest roles of the City Council is to approve the budget, and of course, with the recent award to the Boston police officers through the arbitration award, and depending upon whose numbers you listen to, but it appears to be a sizable number, perhaps as much as $25 million. That puts you in a little bit of a hole to start. You get pushing the ball up the hill your first day out of the box, aren't you?
Well, I mean, one of the things that the executive administration, the Menino administration, they consistently put money aside in each and every contract to deal with potential shortfalls related to negotiations in contracts. So there isn't that big of a shortfall. There is some for coming forward. We'll have to increase the budget in that area to compensate. But we felt it was really important to have our public safety officials, police and fire, in an equitable position. You know, parity was important for us to reach that. Now, at this time moving forward, not only all public safety unions have to be considered in the same breath, so that when we're talking about increases, we're talking about the same increases, whether it be for fire, whether it be for police, whether they're up or they're 2 years out.
Well, of course, if you listen to Sam Tyler, who's a self-admitted fiscal conservative and, you know, certainly an advocate, watchdog, nonetheless,
Right.
but for business interests, said that's part of the problem, that it's going to drive up raises for all. And you know, the council's already approved it, and it's in place. So, but do you worry about that?
Well, you worry about all fiscal matters. I mean, the most important thing we can do is balance the budget and make sure that our revenue sources continue to come in. I think there's an inordinate amount of pressure on real estate taxes in the city, and so we need to find alternative sources of revenue. And I think that we can do that. You know, what most people don't realize is that when I first came on the council 7 years ago, near 30% of the budget came from state aid, and now that's only 19%. So we've made that up and still progressed, continue to give our workforce what can be considered as reasonable raises, created parity amongst public safety, and continue to have our city grow. We do that because we continue we have new growth revenue of $30 million each year since I've been on the council. So that's up in the $180 million for next year. And there are new properties that are coming online. So we need to continue to grow. We need to manage our growth. But also we need to look at efficiencies within the government, do some, and the new mayor has spoken to this, to do some efficiency work where we can consolidate the government in certain places.
Well, I'm thinking in years past, sometimes there's been agreement with the administration, but oftentimes there isn't. Yeah. And in a couple instances, a bit of a knockdown, drag-out fight. How do you approach it now, and how will you approach it with the new mayor? Will you give him some breathing room, being the veteran that you are of this process?
Well, I mean, he's reached out to us and said, excuse me, that he'd like to be, he would like to include the city council in the beginning stages of the formulation of a budget, which, you know, getting a little feedback on the front end, especially with your first budget, and we have enormous experience on this council that folks that have been in leading roles in the transportation department, in public works, in the parks department, in Boston Centers and Youth and Families. So I think this budget could be one that truly we can work together to develop, and then, you know, the city council has a role of saying that if this is too much money for one particular department or in a particular area, we have the ability to, you know, to reduce the budget.
So kind of a test run of the collaborative process, collaborative philosophy, at least that he espoused during the campaign. You know, and you've worked with, of course, Mayor Menino, who was rather tight-fisted and I think controlling, and I think that'd be fair to say. Do you give this guy, though, some kind of, he's a rookie, you know, and, you know, room to make some mistakes and...
I mean, he's a rookie in the sense that it's the first time in an executive position of this magnitude, but he has 17 years of experience in state government with a budget that's 10 times the size of our budget. And so, you know, he understands line items, and he understands the legislative process. He understands the negotiation. And so I just think that it seems that there's a renewal for all of us, and that we're gonna give each other a chance in this regard moving forward. And I think it will bode well for the citizens of the city.
Well, it certainly is a new day in many ways, new mayor, and now a new president of the Boston City Council, just elected to, now it's 2-year terms instead of 1 year. So Bill Linehan is the District 2 City Councilor, and now the president of the Boston City Council here tonight on Talking the Neighborhoods. What else do you have on your plate? What will you consider a successful term if after 2 years? What would you really like to accomplish?
Well, I think there's a number of things that related to development. We need to grow the city, but density is an issue that needs to be dealt with, especially in and around transportation infrastructure. So,
how so?
Well, I mean, as we continue to build high rises, we need to be able to get people in and out of work. Those that come to visit, those that reside, need to be able to have access and egress to all the areas. So I need transportation needs to be a focus. I would say that of course the schools. I think an infrastructure assessment of all city buildings and to evaluate our property and what do we need and what we don't need moving forward. I think that there are assets sitting there that may not be needed at this time.
Even if it meant closing some schools?
Well, I mean, if the schools are not, you know, what we should be doing is looking for the most effective plus efficient way to execute. So it's not just schools. It could be buildings in general that we own, property that we own. So.
Of course, talking about the density around transportation, there's a move afoot to essentially build without guaranteeing parking spaces, which is something that was anathema not so long ago. But could we see more of that?
Well, you know, transportation-oriented housing, you know, maybe. But we need to build parking because people may say that they're not going to use their cars, excuse me, but they do buy them, you know? They do buy their cars and they do have them, so they sit longer. We need to resolve this issue. More people on bikes, better bike lanes, additional mass transit. Those are issues that need to be addressed and need to be built upon. But also that when you're in a residential area, folks are going to want a parking space, especially if we're going to continue to entice families to live in our neighborhoods. They need to be able to jockey kids around from school to sports to the library and those sorts of things. You can't do that on a bike.
Well, I keep thinking of some of those double parked cars on a few streets in South Boston.
We don't have double parked cars.
Just occasionally, just to run in and pick something up. But of course, the South Boston waterfront has been the focus of intense development and will be for in the years to come.
Right.
Is that something you hope to encourage at a denser level, a higher level, even if it were to impact? I know it's on, not necessarily near the main residential neighborhoods, but of South Boston, but everything's close.
Yeah. So one of the key issues is the city, in many regards, has not been rezoned. So zoning is a process that allows for predictability in development and something that you can plan around. So I think that we need to reconsider our zoning in and around all of our residential neighborhoods. And because what's happening today is you used to have residential here, commercial over here, industrial here. Nowadays, everybody wants everything in the same area. So people want to live, work, have hospitality, activities, all in the same area. And so we need to plan better. I think some of the changes at the BRAs that are needed in that regard. I think we need to look at zoning as a mechanism to create predictability around development and also infrastructure improvements.
Sometimes that raises the temperature. Well, I've got to ask you this: you're still singing.
Yes,
I'm sorry. I always think, and I always will think of you as the singing counselor, because you.
My wife wished I would just not sing as much because that's the only venue I have these days is at home. But
well, of course, and last year you hosted the annual St. Patrick's Day breakfast in the absence of Jack Hart, who had resigned his seat. Will you play a role in this year's? There was some discussion at one point, and you had talked about possibly playing a role again. But
yeah, well, I mean, there was discussion early on about whether the new state senator for the 1st Suffolk District would take on that responsibility.
Linda Dorsina-Forey.
Linda Dorsina-Forey. And after discussion with colleagues, and I deferred to our dean, the Congressman Lynch of our delegation, and he felt that it's always been the state senator, so I deferred to her. This is going to be her first breakfast, just as mine was last year. It's a big undertaking. So, of course we'll help. We'll wish her well. And, we're looking forward to the developments in and around all of the celebrations around St. Patrick's Day in South Boston.
And could there be a role for you as having hosted that last year?
Well, yeah, I mean, when I took on that responsibility with only 5 or 6 weeks to go.
You did an admirable job, I have to say. I really.
Yeah, I mean, so what happens is then it becomes yours, and you realize. So we take leads from the host.
And so if she wants you to sing, you might be singing again, not just for your wife.
I always sing in and around St. Patrick's Day.
Again, District 2 City Councilor Bill Linehan is now President Bill Linehan of the Boston City Council. Here tonight, we've got just a minute or two left. Going back to the council and the elections, the rules have changed. It used to be one-year terms.
Right.
And of course, Steve Murphy, normally it would be 2 one-year terms.
Right.
In order to kind of get it back on track or get it on track, Steve Murphy served 3 one-year terms, and now you will be serving a 2-year term.
During that period, they had adopted 1 2-year term, and you couldn't serve in consecutive terms. So that's the rule that's in place now. And when we bring the rules forward for 2014, which will occur before February 6th, we will retain that rule.
And what did you do to cobble those votes together at the end? What was the key ingredient, including new member Michelle Wu, who took a lot of heat for voting for you, which I have to say I thought somewhat unfairly, whether regardless of politics, but she.
So the strategy was that if I won the election, and I did, and I won it resoundingly by 1,100 votes, that I'd go out immediately and just let my colleagues know that as we move forward into the next term, that I'd be interested in leading the body if they felt that it made sense for them. And I talked to pretty much every councilor over the 6-week period, and I guess I was influential enough and to pull it off, and I'm on it.
And no fallout from the fact that you were opposed or anything like that?
No. I mean, you're supposed to be opposed. It's a democratic process, and a number of folks thought that they could do it also. And fortunately for me, I won.
That's how it works, just like the regular election. Incidentally, a convincing win in November. Some people thought you might be vulnerable there. You turned the tide there. What was the key to that?
I don't know. I walked into an event and someone yelled out, "Lazarus is here," and I turned around. I didn't know they were talking about me. Hard work. Excuse me. Hard work over the past 2 years, I'd say.
Yeah, campaigning. Again, now the president of the Boston City Council, Bill Linehan. And Bill, as always, nice to have you here. Nice to
Thanks,
have you.
Joe.
I hope you'll come back as various issues come up. We'd love to talk to you more.
Be glad to.
When we come back with more of Talk to the Neighborhoods, you'll meet one of the new faces on the Boston City Council. He's the new District 8 Councilor, Josh Zakim. All right, we're back with more of Talk to the Neighborhoods. I'm Joe Heisler, your host. Tonight, city politics are usual want, and what better than the Boston City Council? Earlier, you met the new City Council President, Bill Linehan, and joining him on the council is your 4 new faces, literally 3 new and 1 returning. And tonight you meet one of them. He is the new District 8 City Councilor, replacing Mike Ross, who left to run for mayor. He is the scion of famed, the late, great civil rights activist of Lenny Zakim. District 8 City Councilor Josh Zakim joins us. And Josh, so nice to have you here.
Thanks for having me tonight. It's great to be here.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And well, how was your start to the Boston City Council? You know, it's built up, legendary, and then all of a sudden you show up and you get sworn in, and now what?
Well, you got to make sure the phones are working and the emails all hooked up. And it's been a great transition so far. I mean, Mike Ross and his staff were a huge help, during the transition period, after the election and before the swearing in. And since then, the current councilors, the staff there, the central staff have all been really helpful in making sure that, like I said, the phones are working, the emails turned on, and we really got to work on pretty much day one, dealing with folks who have been calling in with constituent concerns from across the district. You
accustomed to being greeted as counselor?
No, I'm still getting used to that. I'm still getting used to that.
I'm
and
teasing, of course.
It's been, the welcome in general, though, has been really very warm over there.
Well, and I think for most people, they once they get there, however forbidding the fortress is, the people inside are very warm-hearted. I've got to ask you about this because, of course, I know your father was one of the most politically active people in the city, but wouldn't he be? What would he be thinking that his son was a politician? And you were young when he passed, but did you ever talk about that?
Well,
is that how you got the bug?
Well, I certainly had some good advice from him when I ran for 6th grade student council. But it was just it was not something that I had really planned on for my whole career. It's really something that I thought with the changing time in the city right now, a place to be able to put those values in that my dad stood for so many years, and that my mother, my sisters, really everyone taught me growing up. Values of social justice and equality. It really seemed to me that we were having this changing time in the city with a new mayor, four new city councilors. I mean, there's a new school superintendent coming in, different department heads across the city. Really was the opportunity, I think, to set the tone for the next generation in this city, and that's why I wanted to get in that race, and that's sort of what I hope, to be able to accomplish on the council, to make sure that we continue to have a city that is open and welcoming to everyone, that's providing those opportunities that, my parents certainly taught me to fight for, and that I certainly plan to fight for with, my colleagues on the council and with Mayor Walsh.
Well, he's looking down from someplace up there, smiling, I'm sure.
I hope so,
and,
yeah.
Enjoying it. Of course, I know your family was there for the swearing
Sure.
in, and what a great ceremony it was. Are you feeling the esprit de corps, so to speak? Marty Walsh came into the chamber following of course, his speech. He was very open as well, but came into the city council chamber after the election of the new president and offering his hand, sincere, legitimate.
It certainly sounds like that. In every discussion I've had with the mayor, he's been speaking, again and again about collaborating and working together, with the council and individual councilors, and I think that's incredibly encouraging. I didn't work under, with any other mayor. This is my first time there, and I think Mayor Walsh also has really put out a hand of cooperation, and I can tell from some of the councils who have been there a little longer that they're excited as well. I think it's really an opportunity for us to work together as a council. I think to really try and speak with one voice on the issues that are important to the whole city, and I've certainly seen that from my fellow freshman councilors and the ones sort of returning, Councilor Flaherty, and the folks who have been there already. It's really, I think, time to set a new tone and being able to work together, whether it's within the council, with our state reps and state senators, and with the mayor. It's really important that if we're going to solve some of Boston's problems and make sure that this is a city for everyone to have opportunity, we have to work together.
Now, you didn't vote for Bill Linehan, but do you feel like he's a guy you can work with?
Yeah, absolutely. I spoke with President Linehan earlier today. We've probably spoken on almost a daily basis, since the election of council president, and I think that's been the case, I believe, across the board. With all 13 members of the council, talking and working together. I think Mayor Walsh, in his speech to us on day one, said, if there are disagreements, you leave them on the field, and we work together. And I really, that's something I subscribe to personally. I certainly subscribe to during my campaign, and I, hope that my colleagues will as well, and it certainly seems that way.
Of course, you no sooner got sworn in, you were under the microscope, so to speak. A lot of pressure come to bear on you?
I think it was generally, quite cordial. I spoke with several of my colleagues who were, at one point or another pursuing the council presidency, and as a matter of public record, I voted for Councilor Presley, and I think she would have done a great job. And I really do look forward, though, to working with, Councilor Linehan, who has been very helpful, and his staff has been helpful, in our transition and making sure we're all ready to work together.
They didn't put you down in a closet down. No, that's only at the State House. I think they do that, not at Boston City Hall. I'm teasing, of course. You've got a lot of. There's always lots of issues in downtown, and I know your district runs all the way from Mission Hill all the way to the West End, and. Can you fix that bridge? Can you do anything about that? What's that little bridge that goes over to Cambridge? No, I'm teasing, of course, but you've got a whole host of issues. There's that. There's the tunnel under the Esplanade. Let's see, what else?
There's a lot. There's a lot of activity in this district.
Closing the Callahan Tunnel. I know that's not in your district, but boy, it has a big impact.
Well, I think all the issues talking about transportation infrastructure are so important to the city as a whole, and I think the fact that I represent a lot of our downtown neighborhoods that are often a focus of whether it's transportation infrastructure changes or a lot of development that is really focused on our downtown neighborhoods. And it's an exciting place to live. I live in the Back Bay. It's an exciting place to represent. But we really need to make sure, and I think Mike Ross did a pretty good job of this, is balancing the fact that these are also neighborhoods. I was talking to someone the other day, and he was talking about a project in the Back Bay. He said, well, it's not really a neighborhood, so you don't have to worry about it. So, I live in the Back Bay. My neighbors live in the Back Bay. We came out, it is a neighborhood. We have neighborhood associations. We have folks who really are raising their families there. And I think sometimes, difficult.
That gets lost.
It does get lost a little bit, and that's certainly, I think, a role I plan to play on the council to make sure all of our neighborhoods, whether we're talking from Mission Hill to Beacon Hill to the West End, are represented there, and those concerns, and they're often legitimate concerns about traffic, congestion, are taken into account. And I think seeing some of the projects you mentioned, which are causing some temporary and some quite longer temporary, hopefully, snarls.
So let's hope not too long.
Exactly,
temporary.
exactly. But hopefully it's an important step to make sure that for the 5 or 10 or 20 or hopefully longer years after that, our city is able to handle the influx of folks who are coming to work here and coming to live here. I mean, that's a good problem to have, that so many people want to be living and working in Boston, that we are expanding our infrastructure.
Well, do you think most people, are they cutting you a little slack here until you get your feet wet? Of course, you're a week on the job now, and we were fortunate enough to have you come in, and I appreciate it. We wouldn't expect you to know where every body's buried, so to speak. But as you move forward, how do you have your schedule in terms of the kinds of issues you want to attack and you want to go after?
Well, we talked, on the campaign and things that are important to me, on the large scale, big picture issues, really social justice and equality in this city, and obviously a bigger picture in the Commonwealth.
Haves and have-nots.
Exactly. It's something that Mayor Walsh talked a lot about. It's something that we see every day in the paper. Any sort of demographic look at the city of Boston has shown that since the recession, our very high income population in Boston has continued to go up. Our very low income population has continued to go up. But the middle income, the working class population really is slowly vanishing, and not so slowly, vanishing from Boston, especially some of our neighborhoods that I represent on the council. And I think, to me, that's a problem from a moral standpoint, from a social justice standpoint, but it's also a problem for a city as a whole. A city is a place that different folks from different backgrounds, with different jobs, different education levels, coming from different places, are living and working and playing together. And I think right now, Boston still has that, but we're in danger of losing it, and you can see that in the trend lines. So I think it's incredibly important when we're talking about our school system, when we're talking about housing or development, that we're going to plan effectively to make sure that when we are having new development, whether it's in District 8 or other areas of the city, whether it's the transit-oriented development, whatever we're doing, we need to be thinking about the big picture, and not just what are these 50 or 100 or 200 units going to look like, but what are the next 5,000 units or 10,000 units of housing in Boston going to look like, and is that going to provide a place for a family to live? Is it going to provide a place for young folks to live? Is it going to provide a place for senior citizens to continue to live in their neighborhoods?
Well, have you thought about how you want to approach that? Do you subscribe to some of the remedies that, say, Bill de Blasio is espousing in New York City? He's talking about perhaps taxing the rich people in the city a little bit more to take care of some of those without. I'm not looking to put you on the spot here, but how do you tax something like that? And I know it's not something that's going to be done overnight. Don't get me wrong.
Well, no, I think the most important thing is recognizing that we do have a problem there, and I think that without a doubt, with Mayor Menino, during many of his farewell addresses, I heard him say that numerous times, that the biggest problem facing our city is the growing inequality. Mayor Walsh campaigned a lot on that. I campaigned a lot on that. A lot of the other councilors have come in campaigning on that. So that's the first step. We know, and we see this coming. I think that's really a change from prior generations where we saw, large changes like this demographically, economically. We see it coming. We know that we, as a city, want to make sure that we continue to be a place for everyone. And I think when it comes to our schools always being a place to provide an opportunity and upward mobility towards, steady middle-class jobs, that's great. We need to improve our school system. We need to have schools in every neighborhood, good schools in every neighborhood, which we don't have right now. But we also need to say, on the housing front, we have a great economy in Boston compared to many other cities in this country. And a lot of that's being driven by, our healthcare sector, our high-tech sector, other areas. But what we sometimes aren't realizing is that if the workers in these sectors are not able to find places to live, where they want to live and where they can afford to live, or when they start working at age 23, 24, 25, maybe a few years later they don't want to live with 4 roommates, downtown anymore. People want to settle down. And if we don't have those options, these workers that are providing so much of this, wealth generation and, income for our economy, revenues for the city, services, for everything that we need, they're going to pick up and go somewhere else. They're going to go to Philadelphia or Austin, Texas, or California, and that really strikes me as something we need to look at from a planning perspective.
Well, and I work my day job downtown, and I'm seeing these high rises going up all over, and I have to say it has injected some life into certain areas of the city where there was no life after 6 p.m. and I think that's probably good, but it is is high rise, denser. Serving that area, is that a good idea? Do you support more of that? And now there's talk about building developments without parking.
Right.
Is that something that's a good idea, bad idea?
I think it's a case by case analysis. I think when there's effective transit, we just had one project approved in the West End, Lovejoy Wharf, that I believe is the first project, residential project in the city with no on-site parking. That is the most transit-oriented neighborhood in our city. I mean, we have the orange line there, you have the commuter rail line at North Station, the green line, the red line. It's close to downtown. When something works, and I'm not a traffic engineer, I certainly would want to make sure we do study it to make sure that's something that people want to come and live in, and that's not going to unduly burden the existing neighbors. But sure, that's an innovative way of looking at development and maybe making it a little more cost effective to offer units at a price that's more affordable for folks if developers aren't being required to build parking that people aren't going to use. Now, some of our neighborhoods that aren't so transit accessible, that can't rely on people riding their bikes 10 minutes down to work or that sort of thing, maybe that doesn't work. But it's a case-by-case analysis, and that's really, I think, how we need to approach most of our development and planning it with neighborhood input and a plan that we're going to stick to. And I really think that with Mayor Walsh's talk about restructuring how the BRA operates, and I know it's not going to be a quick process, but seeing if we can really embrace that sort of long-range planning, making sure hopefully the council, as he's mentioned, will have a stronger role there, and our neighborhoods to make sure that yes, the city is growing, we need to provide for that, but also make sure that the folks who built these neighborhoods and who built the city are not priced out or not pushed out by a new development.
Well, there's a lot of work going on. Again, Josh Zakim is one of the newest faces on the Boston City Council. He and two others sworn in last Monday to start serving their first term, and he's here tonight on Talking the Neighborhoods, catching up on his hopes, dreams, aspirations going forward. Of course, there's a lot of things the city of Boston could do if they had the money.
Right.
Of course, there's a lot of demands, and there could be many, many more coming up because, in part, of union contracts, about 90%, or well, I don't know if it's 90%, but a large portion of the costs are personnel costs. And they just approved a 26% raise for the Boston Police Department, and there's talk of parity. Depending upon who you talk to, I'm thinking of Sam Tyler from the Boston Municipal Research Bureau, who was here last week, who had the number around $100 million. And of course, that's over a number of years, but that's $100 million if it's real. Less that you can spend on attacking some of these problems, be it housing, income inequality, et cetera, than you normally would. Does that give you pause when you hear about some of these union contracts and negotiations? Would have you approved that contract increase for the arbitration award for the Boston Police Patrolmen had you been in there?
I don't think I would have. And I think when we're talking about any contract, whether collective bargaining agreement or really any financial transaction or agreement the city's entering into, we need to look at it from the long-range perspective, not what it's going to cost us this year or next year. And when it comes to labor agreements, so much of it is retiree costs and healthcare costs. These are issues I worked on as a municipal finance lawyer before I ran for office, looking at post-employment benefits and how that is going to affect the financial ability of government entities or private borrowers to meet their obligations. So, it's sort of the city of Boston aspect of it is a small part of a bigger issue that's facing this country when it comes to health care and post-employment obligations, whether it's public or private employers. But for me, whether it's a vote, whether it's, we're discussing it, informally, formally, whatever it is, we need to make sure that we're fiscally responsible in the sense that we have the money to pay for the services we need. I'm the first one to say, our policemen, our firefighters, our teachers, our city workers deserve to be paid, fairly, and deserve, I don't expect people to work longer hours and to do other things without being compensated for that. But we also have to look at the big picture. Is it something that we can afford? And you, I think, said it very well, and I know I've heard Sam Tyler say it, before. It's that, you are taking from one pot and putting into another. It's not like this is just only, money that can only be used for this. It's money that we're not going to use on the schools. So it is tough weighing the differences, weighing the different aspects of the issue. But we just need to be careful, because I think Boston, Mayor Menino left us with a great bond rating. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts, right?
Could be Detroit.
Exactly, and and that is something we need to be careful about. And looking down the road, we need to say, what can we afford? Like I said, what can we afford in this budget year? But what can we afford in 20 years from now? And how's that going to affect our current?
Are you confident, given Marty Walsh's background, that he can say no to the unions? I mean, or that somehow that'll all fall on you as councilors?
I'm looking forward to seeing how the mayor handles a lot of situations, whether it's contract negotiations, development in some of my neighborhoods. I certainly take him at his word when he says that he will be able to be a responsible steward of the city's finances.
Well, we used to ask this question here, and I remember Sam Yoon saying, you're going to ask me the Menino question, which was, are you willing, are you capable, are you able to stand up to the mayor in Boston? Of course, the mayor, it's a strong mayor form of government where they have a tremendous amount of leverage and power. Do you foresee a situation like that, or do you get a different feeling from this guy?
I'd say, from my negotiation, I never, had the Menino question, as you put it. But, from, all my discussions with Mayor Walsh and, folks that have worked with him over time, I don't see it. I really take him at his word when he said, you leave it on the field. If there are policy disagreements, and I certainly expect there will be between himself and myself, between me and some of my colleagues. I mean, that's the nature of what we do. But I certainly, from a personal perspective, I like to, leave it out there. You discuss the issue is decided one way or the other, and then we have to work together on other policy issues, other initiatives across the city. So I fully expect when the mayor says he's going to do that he will. That's how I plan to operate, and I hope most of my colleagues will as well.
Well, again, Josh Zakim, the new District 8 City Councilor, replacing Michael Ross, who left to run for mayor, and a fresh, bright new face on the council. We've got just a minute or two left, and I wanted to ask you about, go back to talking a little bit about your father, and of course, I'm sure you reminded him every day, but especially every time you drive across that bridge. How is it to drive on a bridge that's named after your family?
Well, it's obviously it's a great tribute to the work my father did, but more importantly, it's the metaphor of building bridges, which is what he did in his professional life amongst different communities, folks with different racial backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds, and socioeconomic backgrounds. And that's certainly something I tried to do in our campaign, and I plan to do on the city council, because we are all in this together. Whether we're talking about, in my district, in Boston, in the Commonwealth, we need to work together to solve these big problems. They're not going to solve themselves. And that starts with reaching, whether it's, across the metaphorical aisle or across the metaphorical neighborhood, or not so metaphorical, but, we need to work together. And that's really what I would say. He taught me a lot of things, before he passed away, but it was about building relationships with people from different backgrounds, whether they look differently, talk differently, came from somewhere else. You're going to care about the same issues, and you're going to be able to work together to solve those problems because you know the person as an individual, because you care about them as an individual, and you continue to work together. And I think that's really the only way we're going to be able to be successful in this city, and that's sort of a lesson that I will continue to carry with me, on the council.
Well, there's a lot of fondness and a lot of goodwill from your father, and I'm sure some of that carrying over to you when talking about a lot of the things that he did. So nice to see you. Nice to have you here again. Josh Zakim is the District 8 City Councilor. You'll be seeing and hearing a lot from him lately. They've just sworn in 1 week ago today, and They've even got the phones working now. So just kidding, of course. Josh, congratulations again. And
Thank you.
Thanks so much for coming in and joining us. You're watching Talking the Neighborhoods. We're here tonight and every Monday night. The same time, we'll be back 2 weeks from tonight after the Martin Luther King holiday with another set of guests. We'll start our profiles of gubernatorial candidates. Till then, for the entire staff and crew, thanks for joining us. Have a pleasant evening. Good night.